I'm a celebrated skier, folks, and qualified to smirk. I've skied more hills than any man from Frisco to New York. But talking about the skiing I've done is my one and only quirk.
Hello everybody, I'm Bob Beattie, and I first visited Aspen in 1956. And I have some stories to tell you about legends of Aspen.
Beats, that was a very humble introduction, going back to those 50s when you were actually coach at Middlebury, when you came to Aspen for that very first time, prior to your going to CU and then onto the U.S. ski team.
First time I ever came to Colorado was in 1956 in the NCAA championships at Winter Park, Colorado. And after that competition, which we finished third in, Middlebury did, and I came up here to visit. Stayed at Ralph Melville's place, the Mountain Chalet. Never have forgotten a second of it. It was a great experience, and I had a great impression about Aspen at that time.
What was that impression?
The biggest impression I had is that it was so unique. I was an Eastern boy, and it's a little different back in New Hampshire and Maine and Vermont. And this was very colorful, and we'd heard all about the snow skiing and everything else and the mountain climbing. And so I remembered it. And then after coaching at the University of Colorado, I came up here in 1970 after leaving also the U.S. ski team. And I moved in. I had absolutely nothing to do at the time. And guess what? In another few weeks, we were loaded.
What created the desire to move to Aspen? Why Aspen? You were living in Boulder, which was a fine town. Why the move?
The things that I really endeavored to do when I left the U.S. ski team, because it was very historical, and it was the first ski team, first time that men had ever won medals before, Jimmy Huger and Billy Kidd. I wanted to do something different up here, and we did a lot of things differently. We started NASTAR, which at one time fell over 180 programs in the country, and it's been a success ever since. And also we started pro skiing. It was a great experience for everybody, and we really moved in on it.
So Aspen was the home of NASTAR and the home of World Pro Skiing. How did Aspen influence those events?
The way that Aspen influenced those events was that, first of all, when I came here in '70, every night was New Year's Eve. So we went out a lot, all of us. We had a lot of friends in town. We were true locals, so to speak. And maybe we were a little naughty, but we had a lot of fun. And things that impressed us was the people that lived here, all the locals. I'm a lover of locals, and they never die. They just keep right on charging and telling lies.
There's a lot of those people who still haunt the J Bar at the Hotel Jerome. You had a very strong relationship with a bar stool at the end of that bar. Tell us about your relationship with the Jerome Bar.
The Jerome Bar was a pretty colorful place because we didn't even have to take our boots off after skiing. We just went right there and kept right on going through the evening. It never stopped. And we all met there, and one way or the other. I was one guy who didn't like to stay up that late. And so before midnight, I left. And people always said, "Bob, where are you going?" I said, "I'll be right back." I didn't tell them which day.
Who were some of those characters around the bar?
some of the characters, Bob Freemuth, who owned a restaurant here in town and has a liquor store now, and I were very close, and we are partners in a building here, and he was one of them, and Hunter Thompson was another. After a few years, Spider Savage was murdered, and it was in 1976. My son said, "Dad, you gotta move out of town. You're gonna get killed." And I moved to Woody Creek, and which of course is part of Aspen. And the next door neighbor was Hunter Thompson. And I talked to Hunter Thompson for a long time, day after day, at the downstairs place where we picked up food at that time. And I couldn't understand a word he was saying. And then after a year or so, I understood everything. I said, "Oh, something's happening to me." Now that I understand him. And he was a really good friend. I used to go up there and watch all the football games and everything else. He wouldn't let anybody in the building talk. I had my wife up there at the time, and she was yakking away. And he said, "Marcy, shut up." And we had to watch the games the right way. Hunter used to like to let off fireworks. And we were always up there and enjoyed every second of it.
Speaking of fireworks, you used to have some fireworks down at the Woody Creek residence, and that was on your favorite holiday. Tell us about the 4th of July and its importance to you.
The 4th of July in Woody Creek and Aspen, I still feel the best about it. I sit right in front of the Jerome Bar every year. And but in the old days, we used to have a little picnic at our ranch, quote unquote ranch, and I used to invite maybe 150 people, friends, locals down. And then the last year, several years ago, there were over 300 people came, and they were in the house. They were messing on stuff on the floor and this and that and the other thing. And I said, "I don't even know half these people. That's the last party we're going to have down here."
And still today, you get up early in the morning on 4th of July because it's so important to you?
Every day, the 4th of July is extremely important. It's our nation's birthday. And for those of us who are true Americans, it's a great day. It's the day.
I want to go back to the West End, your time in the West End in the early 70s to mid 70s before you moved to Woody Creek. As I recall, your house was really an open house, and there was always people there. A lot of former racers who you coached kind of thought of you as still the coach and hung out at your house. Tell us about the scenes around that West End home on Hopkins.
You know, it's very interesting. My coaching days I'm still a coach. I still try to boss everybody around. And but when I was coaching at the University of Colorado and the U.S. ski team, I had all these guys, Jimmy Huga, Billy Kidd, Bill Merle, all with me, and they were all 16 at the time when they started with me. And we had a great time. And they still visit me over and over and over. Half of them, most of them, lived in my house in Boulder at one time or another. And the last couple of years ago, I went down and asked the people who own it now if I could look around, and they said, "Sure, but just tell me, where did Billy Kidd and Spider Savage and everybody else live? Where did you put them?"
There were some good parties there, as I remember. You were even hosting on the West End on Hopkins in that house. I remember attending a party. It was the 45th birthday of Frank Gifford. You had a big relationship, a long relationship with Frank Gifford, including here in Aspen. Tell us about that.
Frank Gifford and I worked together at ABC and as commentators, and we were very close. I first knew him when he was working out in Maine, Vermont, and we were friends for a long time. We went to Kitzbühel, Austria, over and over and over, doing all kinds of events for ABC and ESPN. And he was a sensational human being. Passed away way too early.
Speaking of sensational human beings who passed away too early, Spider Savage and the influence he had here in the town of Aspen. Tell us about all that and his relationship with the kids and all.
Spider Savage joined my ski team, U.S. ski team at the time, in Boulder. And he went to the University of Colorado, was on the University of Colorado ski team, was on the U.S. ski team, and then moved up here when we started pro skiing, when we started World Pro Skiing. And it was a dual format, as most of us understand, and he was sensational. He fought it out with Jean-Claude Keely during that period in the 70s. And mostly, he became one of my very, very best friends. And he had been to my house the night before he got killed. And he was going to change his clothes and come back down, and we were going to have dinner. And somebody called on the phone and said, "I think you better get up here." And that was the hardest day of my life, because he was truly one of the great persons. He was a very handsome guy and very colorful, but he was also a great student. And he was everything you can imagine. He was it.
He made a big impact on the kids in town. They used to follow him around town. He seemed to have a very unique relationship with the young ski racing kids in town.
Spider, he was very colorful, and he knew everybody, and he talked to anybody, and he was willing to share his thinking with all kinds of young kids. And the young kids looked at him as a hero, and he was a hero, over and over and over. And just that he was around every day and living here in Aspen, which he loved.
John Denver. Not only, of course, was he an impactful local, but you and he created something quite unique in starting. I remember you coming up, telling me at the hotel, at the Jerome Bar one night, on the back of a napkin even, scratching out an idea for a celebrity pro-am centered around John Denver.
Our relationship with John Denver was very unique, because when we had our World Pro Skiing Days, which we started in 1970 here, and it ran for 11 years, we always were interested in celebrities and everything else. And John Denver and I were having lunch one day or dinner or whatever, and he said, "How can I help you?" And I said, "I'll tell you how you can help me. You can do a celebrity event with our pro skiing circuit." And that's how it started. And it went on for 10 years. And John was always perfect. And John was, he was a colorful guy by himself. He made a big impact on Aspen. Some of us didn't share all of his thinking, but we shared enough of them. And he was very quiet in some ways, but right out there vocally in others. And a lot of people worshiped John Denver. And I remember one year when he went to the Olympics with us in Europe, and we went over together, and we stopped by in Kitzbühel for the Hahnenkamm race, and John was in the John was in the middle of the room playing his guitar, and he had a lot to drink. And guess what? He couldn't remember the words, so I sent him to bed. He was great. He was great. He was a great human being.
Another singer with whom you have a close relationship with over the years is John Oates, your next door neighbor. Tell us about that.
John Oates is my next door neighbor. He looks like he's going to sell his property, which I saw him yesterday, and he said, well, it's not sold yet, and who knows what I'm going to do. He's been very successful, a real big comeback, and he and Hall and Oates are big time right now, and he's all over the place. He's every day doing concerts.
How is he as a neighbor?
Oh, he's a great neighbor. He wanted to always put asphalt on the driveway, but I own the driveway, and I wanted it dirt. And I said, John, I'm never going to change that. We're going to just keep it dirt. And he's okay. He'll live.
Another a neighbor that I've met at your house before, who passed away also, Bradley from 60 Minutes.
You know, Ed Bradley, for many of us, has always been a broadcasting hero. And he used to come up and visit everybody, and he had a place here in town, down Valley. And we used to see a lot of him. And he used to love to hang around with Hunter and the rest of us. And he was a true local. And he was another great guy who unfortunately passed away. But he's never been forgotten.
You also have had to have a good relationship with the Aspen Skiing Company over all the years, having put on countless events here, including, as I remember, even the first pro downhill was right here in Aspen, which requires a lot of manpower, a lot of cooperation from the Aspen Skiing Company. Tell us about the influences between the two parties that had an effect on town and on ski racing.
Well, the World Pro Skiing that we started in '70 had a lot of background as far as dual racing, parallel racing, man against man. And we also started one of the downhills, but I don't think that really hit that much. It wasn't like it. People understood if you didn't have to be a ski racer or a racing enthusiast. Let's put it that way, to understand that you don't have to know how to turn left or right. It's much better to learn how to be winner or loser, and that's what pro skiing did. Right now, I talked to some friends of mine the other day, and they said, Bob, dual racing is going on all over the country, in this country, more so than Europe. And all the little local clubs and everything else are working with that. And I think we're all pretty proud of the fact that it's survived so well and doing so. I'd like to see the U.S. ski team do more of it. But then again, I'd like to have the ski team do a lot more. That's the nature of the beast, unfortunately, for them, not for me. And we'll see.
What about Aspen's heritage in ski racing?
Aspen has always been a great place as far as I'm concerned, as far as skiing, because the Roach Cup was a big deal in this country. Before the World Cup, it was a big deal. And it was a great mountain. Why not? And Aspen always did a great job preparing for it and everything else. And Aspen brought it into its own mold, so to speak. And they always remembered that local situation. And I think that that's what made it so good.
And culminating with this, the FIS World Cup Finals this year. What was your take on that?
Now, the World Cup Finals this last year was a huge success. I have probably been to well over 100 World Cup races in my life, way more than that. And that competition, I think, was the best ever in World Cup skiing. The numbers of people in town that came out for it, the support that the Aspen Skiing Company put into it, and everything else. A big party that, as you know, we put together for people who came from all over the country. We had a 500 people max, and it was sold out. We could have had many more. And everybody has created that. I'm very disappointed in the FIS, the Federal International de Ski, by saying if we don't put a lift, Aspen doesn't put a lift up the mountain, we're not going to come. That's wrong. It's the same thing over in Vail. They have to go way up to get to the mountain. It's the same in Kitzbühel. You can't get there easily. I don't know why they're picking on Aspen, but we'll never quit. And Aspen is very solidly behind it.
The Crown family, obviously continuing that heritage. What's your advice to them?
The Crown family has stepped in with a lot of money and a lot of people who love skiing, who all have places up here, and they pretty much stay out of the day-to-day business. They have a great local group of people who work for them, and everything that is being put in place now is very successful. The ski company also has reached out more and more to the locals, and boy, that's good. And that's bringing Aspen even higher. I don't want to talk about Vail, but I sure can talk about Aspen.
You made a lot of impacts in your career, starting the U.S. ski team, starting the World Cup as a co-creator of the World Cup, starting pro racing, NASCAR, on and on and on. But you've told me in the past one of the things you're most proud of, and that's a local program. You want to tell us about Aspen Supports Kids?
I'll talk about that as long as anybody will listen. But the AS program, Aspen Supports Kids, was something that we developed back in 1968. And what happened was we had a separate club here in town, and it ran with the ski company, the World Cup. And we had some money left over at the end with sponsorships. And we sat down, Brooke Peterson and I and everybody, to say, let's start kids programming inexpensively. So we developed the program, which I've just said, the AS program. And the name is no longer, it's now called the Base Camp program. I'd like to have it switch back to the AS program, but then again, they'll keep hearing my voices. And at any rate, it was for $100 a kid to be part of it, to get transportation up the valley in buses, 1 day a week, 10 days a year, and support instruction from the Aspen Ski Club. Unbelievable. It was a great situation. It's the best in the country and the biggest in the country. I want to see it keep growing. It's 1,600 kids right now, over 1,600. And we have great people running the program.
Let's talk about the future of the Aspen Valley Ski Club. What is your vision for how that club can nurture young people in this valley? I know you have a lot of thoughts about the importance of learning the disciplines that you learn as a ski racer that help you throughout your life. Can you maybe elaborate on that?
Well, I think that ski racing has got tremendous opportunities for it. Not just the racing down the mountain, but you travel together, you train together, you have dinner together, lunch together, whatever. It's an individual sport, yes, but it's also a team event, and that's where I like to see it. I like to see all these kids out there on the mountain having a great time. I think that we travel way too much. It's way too expensive, and we can bring those things way back down. I look forward to seeing the Aspen Ski Club, Aspen Valley Ski Club, reduce the costs by not traveling as much, sending kids out on the mountain, having a great time. The most important thing about ski racing is have fun doing it, but also train hard and train hard, a little more even. And when I was at the University of Colorado, when I was at Middlebury, my brother was the captain of the team then, and the night before we went to the NCAAs in Winter Park, they seemed to have had a beer party that I found out about. And I was very unhappy about it and swore that'll never happen again. And when I started coaching at the University of Colorado, it was sure true, because we trained and we trained and we trained. Other coaches in other sports used to come to our workouts to see why we were working so hard and what we were doing. It was brutal. And when we all get together, we're all still very close friends. And that's one of the great things about skiing, naturally. And they used to come and say, we aren't going to talk about ski racing. We want to talk about the conditioning program, how brutal it was. Oh, you almost killed us. You know what? It's true. If I had to do it again, I'd be even tougher. When I was coaching the U.S. ski team, living in Boulder, we used to train up here in Aspen. And it was quite an experience. Tage Peterson was the trainer. He worked here in town. He just passed away last year. And he was a tremendous trainer. And he worked out with the kids all the time. And all of our meals were run by Werner Kuster and at his restaurant. And for $45 a day total. And he basically gave us everything. And we thought it was pretty special. And it was a great way to train in Aspen.
As part of all of that time in the 60s, traveling around the world, going to the major ski events at all the top ski resorts in the world, having seen all of that, how does Aspen compare to the great iconic ski resorts of Europe? Both then and now, for that matter.
Well, everybody grows. Aspen has grown a lot over the years with different lifts, different mountains, and everything else, 4 mountains. And it's a great ski resort. It's also a great ski resort when it comes to ski racing, because the mountain is fantastic. We saw that in the World Cup Finals this last winter. And not one person I've heard from ever has said anything bad about this here. The only person that's said something bad is the lady who runs the FIS, who said we're not coming back until they put a new lift in. It's none of their business who puts the lifts in. This is just the race result and the race. And it should be, Aspen did a great job. And everybody I've talked to thought it was sensational. I think it was the best.
Of all the qualities that Aspen has, what's the biggest thing to you?
Well, I think one word, the locals. I think the locals make Aspen, and I've always felt that way. I'm a local type, and I just love the locals out there working hard. It's maybe pretty expensive right now. It is very expensive, but we can live with it. We can deal with it. Everybody's doing their best to make it work, and I support that completely.
What would be your greatest fear about the future of Aspen? What do you want to make sure people are focused on protecting about the qualities and character of Aspen?
I'm not too worried about the future of Aspen. I think Aspen is a great place. It's a very colorful place. It's beautiful, and it stands on its own 2 feet. And the most important thing for sure is the people who own it. They're great people, and they truly love this town, and they don't get in there in the middle and interfere or anything like that. I mean, they're everywhere, and the staff is incredible. I mean, I deal with them all the time, and we were on a special little committee last year on the World Cup Finals, and I was very impressed at how they listen, and that's important. Listen to the locals too, and that's great.
You struck up a bit of a relationship with Walter Isaacson, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about the Aspen Institute and its influence on Aspen and its importance, both past and present.
I've just recently met Walter Isaacson and had a nice conversation with him. I was very impressed. The idea that what they're doing is bringing people in from all over the country to Aspen, Colorado, and showing what Aspen's all about and what Aspen can do, I think is insurmountable. I wish he weren't resigning, but he informs me that he's not really leaving. He's just not out of the day-to-day operation, and we'll see. But he's going to be missed. He's a unbelievable, bright person.
What's your hope for the future of this town?
My hope for this town is that you have to have some growth, naturally, but not a lot of growth. We need to measure it, but let's not move too fast. And we have to, most important thing is we have to take care of our locals. And that is not so easy. I mean, it sounds easy, but it's not easy. And I think so many of the city council people and everybody else in the town want to keep it the way it is. And it's grown a lot. When I came in here, there were dirt roads in '70. And it's grown, but that's life. Things do grow, but the town by itself is not really growing that much. It's okay. We're okay, as long as we have the locals. The people who come to mind, as far as our background is concerned, are Arten Pfister and his wife. Nancy Pfister, who got killed, unfortunately, was one of my close friends. 2 ski racers, the Savage brothers, used to live with me at a house here I had in town. And she used to arrive at 7 in the morning. And I said, no, don't ever come here before 9. And the whole family was sensational. It left a big impact on Aspen. And I think that those are the 2 of the people and their kids who I really appreciated. Bob Freemuth and I own a portion of the Aspen Grove building, and it's been very successful, fortunately. And he used to own a restaurant here in town. He owns a liquor store now, and he lives in the wintertime, and unfortunately for him, in a southern climate. But he spends the summers here, and he's truly a great guy. We used to spend a lot of time together.
You're on a mission, and your mission is, of course, to grow the fan base for ski racing.
Yes.
And surrounding that, of course, means having a great U.S. ski team, which requires a feeder up to that level. Talk to us about all of that.
I'm very interested in the U.S. ski team. I don't think that they're headed in the right direction right now. It becomes very expensive. As an example, you have to spend over $20,000 a person to be on the C team, more to be on the B team, and that's not right. Those should be rewards, not penalties. And the cost of skiing is ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and that has to go down. But the best way to handle that is through local programs. Local programs are everything. We have a tremendous new guy who came from Maine and is running the program right now, and he's doing a great job as far as I'm concerned. He has a great staff. We have a great girl who runs the ASP program for kids, and it's moving forward.
How should they change it?
I would change it by developing the local coaches, the best coaches you can find. John McBride coached here last year. He's now coaching the U.S. ski team, downhill men's team. And guess what? He had the entire team down 2 weeks ago, U.S. ski team, here in Aspen. They went out biking and hiking and climbing and spent the overnight in the mountains. And he beat the hell out of them. And and I told them, I had dinner with them one of the nights. And I said, guys, you're going to be at least 10% better than you were last year, just because of your conditioning.
So we speak of Mark Godomsky, who is now running the AVSC. What's your advice to him?
He gets a lot of advice. He's a really good guy. He was at school in Maine, and he's a maniac, and he's got 3 kids that are in the ski program, and I hope they really love it here, because I want him to stay. He's got the background.
Talk about your passion about the NCAA.
The NCAA is a very strong subject as far as I'm concerned. When I was at the University of Colorado, we never had any foreign skiers, period. Never one. And we won 2 NCAA championships. And I was there 9 years coaching. And I don't have anything in mind wrong with the I don't have anything wrong with the Europeans, but we're an American state, and we should be working on American kids. And as I keep telling the University of Colorado people, last year in the NCAAs, you're allowed 12 people, and they had 2 Americans. The year before that, they only had 1. And to me, that's unacceptable. And we'll see. But it's going to kill college skiing. college skiing is a very unique situation here in the United States, and it's not the rest of the world, but it certainly is American, and we should embrace that and really embrace it. But I don't think the ski team is embracing it. As a matter of fact, they're discontinuing a lot of it. We'll see.
Would you advocate that the NCAA have rules that limit the number of foreigners at the NCAA tournaments?
I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if that can work. I think it's up to the coaches who stand up and say, here's how we're going to go. I think it's the way the coaches need to make their rules. And athletic directors are one thing and another. I met with the athletic director at the University of Colorado last year, and we were not happy with each other, fortunately. And they think it's improving their stature. But I don't think that improves the stature. This is a state school. This is a state school with a lot of places in our state that provide skiing. So let's embrace that.
So Coach Rokos at the University of Colorado might say, but Bob, I was hired to win, not to train American kids.
Well, I don't know if that's true. I don't buy that. I'm still a member of the University of Colorado, sort of, and I think that it needs to support our state. It's a state-run school. We need to run it with the towns in the state, and embrace that. Skiing is a big thing in this state, huge. It's a big income producer. We don't want to forget that.
You have also developed a very unique concept for Colorado Mountain College.
I do. Colorado Mountain College is 11 different possibilities around the state. And I've visited several of them. And Walter Isaacson has a place in one of them. It's unbelievable. I was there several weeks ago. And it is very unique. And in addition to that, kids can go to school for very little money. They can have their jobs, they can live at home, and everything else work with, and they can get a great education. And I'm getting more and more involved with that situation, and that's where I'm going to go more than I am with the universities anymore. I haven't given up, but let's put it this way: I'm a big Colorado Mountain College fan.
Is there a ski racing motivation in the back of your head that fits in?
Oh yeah. What I'd like to do is see the first year, see people have a competition at the end of the year, inviting all the kids from these different places to come. And then the second year, to try and introduce them to teams in the different schools. Like Steamboat has got a great one. The one here in Aspen and Down Valley are both great. And elsewhere, it can be a huge success if we really get behind it. It can be a huge success. Walter Isaacson's not a bad guy to have behind you.
What about the concept of bringing back a major professional ski race open and doing it right here in Aspen at the end of every winter? The concept of maybe it's at the end of the World Cup tour. There's been some talk about this recently, to put on a big head-to-head race on Ajax. It's an annual event, and it's head-to-head. Viable?
Last year, the World Cup Finals were a huge success, but it was a very expensive affair. What I'd like to see is an annual Aspen event at the end of the winter, a team event. Parallel ski racing, like we had in the pro skiing days. We found out how enjoyable it was and how many people enjoyed it. You didn't have to know much about skiing to know who won. And that's the key to it. And people keep saying, but Bob, the Europeans won't come. I'm not so sure of that. When we opened pro skiing, I never invited one person to come, ever, in 1970. They came by themselves, all over the world. And the whole U.S. ski team almost was visited us, and we're pros. And what can I tell you? They'll come. People want to ski race here in the United States. It's a big place, and let Europe run itself out. Let it do it. Whatever their thing, let them do it. But let us do what we want to do, and we need to be. Somebody said that when the ski team had Tiger Shaw last year, told me that you have to go to Europe in order to get involved. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I think you could stay home. Kids don't want to travel that much. They want to be with their friends and other people and ski on the home front. And why not do that here in the United States, particularly in Aspen, of course.
If going back to this concept of bringing back pro racing and dual racing, I know that dual racing is part of your heart and soul. Explain to us why it is so important to you for the future of the sport that dual racing be much more embraced by the international ski racing community.
First of all, if you take a look at World Pro Skiing, you have taken a look at parallel racing. And that is understandable by all the people who don't know much about skiing. But they know something about the sport and they're entertained. Right now, the World Skiing Company, FIS, is maintaining, they're having 4 races this winter, 4 dual races this winter coming up. But that's not enough. They could do much more with it. And why not expand so people are interested? If you watch a slalom race or a giant slalom race on television, I want to tell you, you're being bored to death, frankly, and I hate to say it that way, but it's true. Parallel racing is a big key and can really expand, and we can expand that right here in Aspen.
How would you go about that right here in Aspen?
We're trying now. We're working with the ski company. Ski company's interested. They're willing to do a lot of things that it's great. They're on the ball. They're on the ball. We don't have a bad guy there.
I'm a celebrated skier, folks, and qualified to smirk. I've skied more hills than any man from Frisco to New York. But talking about the skiing I've done is my one and only quirk.